Hello guys, and welcome to a new video of mine. Today I'm gonna do something a little different. I want to introduce you to an awesome new card game. It's called Eternal CCG. It's designed by Direwolf Digital. In the design team there's actually a couple of really big names to all my fellow Magic players out there that are watching this. People like Louis Scott Vargas, Patrick Chapin, and Conley Woods, and I think Michael Jacobs as well, are sitting in the design team and are working on the game design part of the game. So you know the people, you know how well they know games like this. They played them for years on a competitive level, basically their entire youth and adult life. So they really have a lot of experience, and they all played the game we all play and love, Magic. And if they work on a new game, we can expect them to bring all the good stuff, all the standards they love from Magic into this new game, and all the experience and lessons they learned while playing Magic competitively for so long. And this is, I think, part of what gives this game a lot of potential to become a really great collectible card game. This is an online card game only, just like Hearthstone basically, but it's a lot closer to Magic than Hearthstone is. I want to introduce you to the game and the client briefly, and in further videos do a set review faction by faction of the colors, or as they're called in this game, factions in this game, to give you kind of a set review for the first set in the game, so you know what you're dealing with, and maybe help you better evaluate cards for when you play yourself. The game currently is in open beta. It can be freely downloaded and installed through the Steam client, and then you basically can just jump in and play. The game is free to play. You can spend money on it the same way you can in Hearthstone, for example. You can buy packs and coins and stuff in the shop. I think the shop just opened with the open beta, but you don't have to. You can just win coins and cards and packs from winning in all the various formats of the game. Okay, so a few cliff notes on how the game works. The game basically works a lot like a game of Magic, except you start with 25 life points rather than 20. Your deck is 75 cards instead of 60, but you also have 7 opening cards. You even have a mulligan, but it works different than in Hearthstone or in Magic. You can basically redraw 7 once if you want to, and the second 7 is guaranteed. 2 sigils, which is the equivalent to basic lands in Magic, so you have at least 2 basic lands in your second 7. But you can have more, so it doesn't prevent you from flooding, but it prevents you from being screwed. So you could still get like a 5 land, like a 5 mana, 2 spell hand, but you cannot get a 0 or 1 land spell hand, so you are at least guaranteed to be able to cast the things you have eventually, which is nice. That solves one of the bigger frustration sources in Magic, which is really nice. Other than that, there's also equivalents to instants. They are called fast spells, and you can play them at various points during your turn and the opponent's turn. And there's regular spells, which are the equivalent to sorceries. There is even a sideboard, which will probably become relevant in tournaments. Right now in the ranked mode and stuff, you only play best of 1, so your sideboard is not being utilized, but if it were, it's 15 card sideboard and works basically the same way as in Magic. There's 5 factions, aka 5 colors. They are white or yellow. Let me show that to you real quick. They are white or yellow depending on how you look at it. They're let's start with them in the order they're in here. There's red, or as it's called, fire. This is very close to how red works in Magic. A lot of direct damage, aggressive creatures, stuff like that. Then there's yellow or white, and it's called time. This is kind of different from what white does in Magic. It's a bit of a mixture between like white and blue maybe in Magic, because the bounce effects, for example, are in the time shard, in the time faction, but also stuff like mana acceleration. This is basically works a bit like a Lanova elf, gives you an additional mana, or like additional power as it's called here, so you can have 3 power on turn 2 rather than 2. So yeah, the name of the shard kind of gives it away. It does all kinds of things that are related to time, buys you time with life gain, accelerates you with additional power, gains you tempo by bouncing and stuff like that. Just what you would expect if you hear time. The third shard is green and called Justice. This is a lot similar to green in Magic, but not fully. For example, flying is much more prevalent in Justice than it is in green in Magic, for example, but the pump, the aura and spell pump based stuff is typical to what we know from Magic. From green and Magic, for example, there is a giant gross equivalent that costs 1 green. Quick explanation on the cost. The number is the cost, and the colored symbol next to it is called the influence or influence threshold. So basically you need at least 1 justice influence to be able to cast this, but it costs 1 power to cast. So basically if you have at least one justice influence and 1 or more power, you can cast this and it uses up 1 of your power in your power pool, or whatever you want to call it. And that is also a slight improvement over the mana issues in Magic. Basically, once you have 1 justice influence, you can cast multiple spells that have 1 justice threshold in your turn, even though you only have 1 justice source, basically, because it works on a threshold system. You just need to fulfill the threshold, and then all your mana counts as mana towards casting justice cards that have that threshold. If that explanation wasn't quite clear to you still, feel free to ask in the comments how it works. I'll try to answer your questions. It's a bit tricky to explain, I think, especially if you're used to the Magic system. The fourth shard is blue and called Primal. This has a lot of elements of what we know from blue and Magic, like card draw and the few counter spells. Like this is one of the few counter spells in the game. It's basically negate or counter squall. It just counters a spell, like a spell or fast spell basically, and deals 2 damage to the controller for 2 mana and a threshold of 1 primal. And there's a lot of flyers here too. So basically Justice and Primal are like the 2 primary flyer colors. And there's also like removal, like this stunning is basically the same as tapping a creature in Magic and not letting it untap. So this basically just it's called exhaust here because there's no tapping in that way. It basically just makes the creature unable to be used for anything and just lie around. And stun means it stays exhausted as long as this card is attached to it. This is basically like an aura in Magic. Then there is one of these lands in each faction. It's basically a man-land. Means once you hit 5 power, all of these man-lands in your hand and deck transform or like transmute into their specific creatures. The blue one is one of the better ones, turning into a 3/4 flyer, which is pretty sweet. And they enter the battlefield or like the enter play tapped, or in this game, as it's called in this game, exhausted, as a downside for being lands in the later game. It's worth to keep in mind that this transmute is not optional, it happens automatically. So basically, if you want to hit 6, 7, 8 lands in your deck and you have a high curve, you might not want to put these cards into your deck because it makes it harder for you to hit your later land drops. And yeah, blue also has some of the more controlling elements of red that we are used to in Magic, like Pyroclasm type effect, 2 damage to all units is in blue. We have some burn in blue even. So blue is a bit of a mix. It has some elements that we know from red in Magic, but other than that, it's a lot similar to blue in Magic basically. And the last faction is called Shadow. It's like purple or black, depending on how you want to look at it. It also has most of the features that we know from Black and Magic. Stuff like Deadly, which is the equivalent to Death Touch, kills the creature it deals damage to. But not only in combat, so this also works on non-combat damage, which is relevant. You might find ways to deal non-combat damage with a creature with Deadly. Small, aggressive and kind of suicidal creatures, just like we know from Black and Magic. For example, this guy deals 2 damage to you, but is a 2/2 for 1, which was above the curve in the game. Then there's some discard. There's cheap creature removal that destroys creatures. There's some graveyard manipulation. The graveyard in this game is called Void. Yeah, there's stuff that cripples creatures. Most of the pump and reduction effects in these games are permanent unless stated otherwise. Like this guy, for example, permanently gives a -1/-1 to a unit, which is basically the same as putting a -1/-1 counter on a unit on a creature in Magic. And yeah, Act of Treason is black in this game. It used to cost 2 in the beta, which was kind of broken because there's a lot of sacrifice effects. Now it costs 3 as in Magic, which is a lot fairer, a lot more balanced. Worth noting is there's 2 dual lands for each of the color combination, even for the enemy color combinations basically, but there's only multicolor cards for the allied color combination, so red-green and red-black, white-green and white-blue, and blue-black have multicolor cards. Actually quite a bunch of them in all rarities that cement the theme of the 2 colors together and combine their features in multicolor cards. And there's a couple of colorless cards that are weaker than colored cards but can also like help patch some holes in a certain color or fix some problems that the color can't solve, basically. Yeah, that's it for how the colors work in this game. Quick on the currencies. You have coins, which you need to do stuff like drafts or forges. I'll explain those game modes in the next video. And yeah, Shiftstone is basically the same as the crafting material in Hearthstone. You get it by destroying cards and by opening packs. Each pack gives you 2 Shiftstone in addition to 1 rare or better, 3 uncommons, and I think 8 commons. The packs are a lot bigger than in Hearthstone. They are closer to like the Magic size of a pack. I think it's like 12 or 14 cards. And yeah, you need 3,000, I think 600. Let me check real quick what the amounts are for crafting cards. Let's see. Legendaries cost 3,200. Rares cost... one second. Rares cost 800. Uncommons cost 100. Commons cost 50. I think they removed the rarity between rare and mythic. During the beta there was another rarity between rares and legendaries, but I think they removed it. But they added premium cards. They are basically the same as foils in Magic, and they cost a lot more. Like a foil rare costs as much shift stone as a legendary, and a foil legendary basically costs three times the amount of a regular legendary. And you can also destroy cards in order to get shift stone, but the ratios are pretty small, as we are already used to from Hearthstone. But yeah, there's no trading, no selling cards. It's the same system as in Hearthstone basically. And you also get coins from winning in these modes, and from chests from daily quests. Yeah, that's it so far. Here's my name and my ID. Feel free to add me if you're into competitive gaming. I'm currently brewing some constructed stuff, so if you wanna talk some strategy, have some interesting constructed ideas and stuff like that, feel free to add me. My friend list is currently empty, so I have a lot of space. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll explain the game modes in the next video, and give the game a try. It's really worth it. It's everything that Magic Online could and should be by now. So they did a great job here in designing this game. If you liked the video, like and subscribe, and leave a comment. Bye.